Donald Trump says no trials for illegal immigrants. Now, of course, the New York Times frames it as undocumented immigrants, saying that the Trump administration doesn't want them to stand trial. But here's the catch. While this is being, once again, factual but not truthful, the Democrats are stepping up and saying Donald Trump is speaking like a dictator. Heavens me, no due process. My friends, I'd like to inform you of one simple fact. I've got the U.S. government website pulled up. Illegal immigrants don't get trials. They get hearings. That's always been the case. And Trump's argument is the judiciary is arguing that each individual have an actual trial, which could take upwards of 2 years. Trump is saying, stick with the law and have the hearings. But the Democrats have turned this into something else entirely. Now, the issue of mass deportation and what's been going on has been quite contentious for obvious reasons. Abrego Garcia is the story that Democrats won't seem to let go, even though they're losing on the issue of immigration. And most Americans actually want mass deportations. Yesterday, I had a chance to sit down with Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, and discuss with her these issues, I would say to a great degree in depth, candid. We had a conversation about whether or not we wanted this to be edited with multiple angles and make it look really cool. And I said, single shot. We do have other angles. Single shot, unedited, raw. We are not playing games. It wasn't live, but I want people to understand. This current administration will sit down and have a long form conversation. Now, the secretary said some very interesting things. Obviously, for those that are fans of Timcast IRL and have heard me talk about it, one of the biggest issues that I've had for a while is that CBP agents were knowingly facilitating child trafficking. And I asked the secretary exactly about, literally about that issue. I said, I want to know who these guys are. She made a good point, saying that it wasn't so much that the CBP agents would see a child and then say, obviously, this person is going into trafficking. They would see a child that they might suspect, but were barred from investigating because of the Biden administration, which I would admit changes the circumstances that perhaps I hadn't considered. However, I still pressed. And that's where it gets interesting. The secretary says they're polygraphing agents in the DHS. They are testing them and trying to weed out corruption because, and the secretary states, the deep state is real. What a crazy thing to hear from a cabinet member in a presidential administration to outright say there is a cabal of intelligence individuals ideologically aligned that are seeking to subvert this country. That is the realm of conspiracy. But now it's stated fact. There are bad people trying to subvert the will of the American people. We are seeing it in the liminal, the superliminal, the liminal, and the subliminal. It's a Simpsons joke if you don't get it. But basically, you've got the behind the scenes leaking of information. You've got the more seemingly normal and overt, which is the judges that are arguing they're legally right to block Trump in his efforts of deportation. And then the superliminal, where Democrats scream Trump is a fascist. So we're going to break this all down, and then I'm going to play for you this interview with Secretary Noem, which I think there's some interesting stuff in there. I got to be honest. It was good conversation. Shout outs to Steven Crowder and the Mug Club, as always, for shouting me out. Really do appreciate it. This is the Rumble noon lineup. I'm your host for the noon hour. The Rumble morning lineup. I'm your host for the noon hour, Tim Pool. You can follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. We're going to jump into this news, but before we do, we have a great sponsor, my friends. It's Proton VPN. With online surveillance, excuse me, man, got a frog in my throat. With online surveillance and the rise and privacy laws constantly evolving, protecting your online activity has never been more crucial. Hackers, ISPs, even the government are watching. They see your location, your browsing history, everything. Take back your privacy with Proton VPN. Secure high-speed servers mask your IP address and encrypt your connection, letting you access content from anywhere safely. With an easy-to-use app, NetShield ad blocker, and a strict no-logs policy, Proton VPN keeps your online activity private and secure. Based in Switzerland with strong privacy laws, Proton VPN has been audited and verified by independent security audits, meaning you can trust that they don't keep logs of your activity. Visit protonvpn.com/timcastnews for 64% off and reclaim your online freedom. Proton VPN, secure private internet. Shout out. Really do appreciate the support from Proton VPN. But let's jump into the story right away from the New York Times. Trump says undocumented immigrants shouldn't get trials before deportation. The president claimed that countries were sending their prisoners to the U.S. and that he needed to bypass the constitutional demands of due process to expel them quickly. Lie. That's a lie. Hey, let's do this. Before you are tainted by the fake news of the New York Times, let me grant you a bit of the information I have received. Here's USA.gov. Okay, that's a .gov. That's the government. Understand the deportation process. They write, learn how the deportation process works and how to get help if you're facing deportation. Even the government's trying to help you, right? They say, what happens when someone is detained by immigration? They say after a non-citizen is detained, they may go before a judge in immigration court during the deportation removal process. In some cases, a non-citizen is subject to expedited removal without being able to attend a hearing in immigration court. Expedited removal may happen when a non-citizen comes to the U.S. without proper travel documents, uses forged travel documents, does not comply with their visa or other entry document requirements. My friends, they are outright telling you it has always been this way. They sometimes don't even give you a hearing. Okay, that's normal. What Democrats and liberals in the media are doing is reframing the understanding of the deportation process to make it seem that every time you want to deport someone, there's supposed to be a trial or let alone some kind of hearing. Let me just stress. Expedited removal means you don't get a hearing. Now take a look at this. An immigration court of the U.S. DOJ hears the related case. If a judge rules that the deportation should proceed, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement carries out a removal order. Before removal is carried out, you might be able to leave the U.S. at your own expense. This is known as, voluntary departure. You can appeal. They say you may appeal some deportation rulings. Before appealing the ruling, find legal services. You may also be able to find help from a nonprofit legal organization. You can also contact a USCIS office. When you are deported, they're usually carried out by air at U.S. government expense. Others may use a combination of air and ground transport. So let's break this down. If you come here without proper documents, forged or fraudulent documents, or you do not comply with your visa, you're out. No hearing. Not even a hearing. That is the normal due process. That is the normal due process. Now, if you are here on a visa and your visa is expiring or it has expired, meaning you did come here legally, but something has changed, you can actually appeal these decisions. You can issue appeals. In the instance of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the man who is, Democrats are probably going to build statues for him and write books about him, I bet. This guy didn't, he was ordered for removal of deportation, and he filed for asylum and 2 withholding claims. Asylum was denied. I forgot what the act is called, but there's an anti-torture act, also denied. But he did receive withholding based on fear of death from a rival gang in Guatemala. He was granted that, but he was still ordered to deport. This withholding just meant we would not send him to die in El Salvador. Now, Trump says undocumented immigrants shouldn't get trials. This is why I showed you USA.gov first. Now that you understand that context directly from the U.S. government website, is, as it always has been, obviously not literally, you go back 200 years, immigration law was different. But as of right now, it's only 3 months into the Trump administration. He did not change those rules or make these laws. This is how we've always handled it. I mean, how else do you think Obama was called deporter in chief? They weren't having trials for every single illegal immigrant. Trump did not make up this rule. What's happening now is the media's lying. They're saying, Trump, these illegal immigrants should get trials. And Trump is saying, no, they shouldn't. We have to deport them. The media is now acting flabbergasted. Donald Trump is saying no due process for illegal immigrants. I am sick of these evil, smarmy, lying scumbags whose sole intention is to burn this country to the ground. They are lying. They brought in tens of millions of illegal immigrants in violation of our laws, spitting in the face of the Americans who are to inherit this nation. And when Donald Trump gets elected to deport them, they are now lying, claiming it's always been the case that you get a trial. A trial? You mean like a bench trial with adversarial courts, with legal defense? That has never been the case. They're lying. They are reframing the system so that Donald Trump will be hamstrung and unable to deport the people they allowed into this country. Again, now that I've already showed you the context here, here's the New York Times wrote. President Trump asserted on Tuesday that undocumented immigrants should not be entitled to trials, insisting that his administration should be able to deport them without appearing before a judge. Didn't I just show you that this is the law? It is how we handle expedited removals. If you fit certain criteria, you do not get a hearing. Incredible. The remarks which he made in the Oval Office in front of reporters were Mr. Trump's latest broadside against the judiciary, which he has said is inhibiting his deportation powers. Trump falsely claimed that countries like Congo and Venezuela had emptied their prisons into the U.S. and that he therefore needed to bypass the constitutional demands of due process to expel the immigrants quickly. That's a lie. Falsely claimed? What do you mean falsely claimed? Venezuela has let their prisoners out. Now, I would say the more reasonable argument is they didn't say, unleash the hordes to America. They said, get out of our prisons and get out of our country. And then where did these people go? They largely went to the U.S. because who wouldn't want to come to the U.S.? So Trump's not falsely claiming anything. And Trump's not arguing to bypass constitutional demands. Quote, I hope we get cooperation from the courts because we have thousands of people that are ready to go out and you can't have a trial for all of these people. It wasn't meant. The system wasn't meant, and we don't think there's anything that says that. He claimed the very bad people he was removing from the country included killers, drug dealers, and the mentally ill. We're getting them out, and a judge can't say, no, you have to have a trial. The trial is going to take 2 years. We're going to have a very dangerous country if we're not allowed to do what we're entitled to do. The New York Times is falsely framing the story. If they were honest, they would say, first things first, current immigration law does not grant a trial to illegal immigrants, nor does it often grant even a hearing. Typically, illegal immigrants are subject to expedited removal, a phrase that's been well discussed for 15 years since they've been calling Barack Obama the deporter in chief. What changed? The Biden administration decided flood the zone. And now they're creating false narratives to shift politics in this country. So I implore all of you, this is why I opened the show with this USA.gov website, so that y'all can see it. They're lying. He made similar statements in a social media post Monday in which he wrote, we cannot give everyone a trial because to do so would take, without exaggeration, 200 years. He's correct. Representative Jonathan L. Jackson, a Democrat in Illinois, wrote on social media, we can't give everyone a trial. Excuse me, what? That's straight up dictator talk. Due process isn't optional because it's inconvenient. This is the United States, not a banana republic. If you want to shred the Constitution, just say so. This is remarkable, isn't it? Mr. Trump's comments came after the Supreme Court early on Saturday temporarily blocked the administration from deporting a group of Venezuelan migrants it accused of being gang members under the expansive powers rarely invoked by wartime law. Mr. Trump issued a proclamation last month invoking the Alien Enemies Act as a way to deport immigrants he alleged were members of Tren de Aragua. This we know. The Supreme Court has ruled that those subject to statute need to be given the opportunity to challenge their removal. Indeed, if you are under the Alien Enemies Act, they said you can now challenge your removal. Still, that doesn't stop Trump from deporting illegal immigrants just for citing the Alien Enemies Act, which largely sends them to CICAT in El Salvador. In the meantime, Trump is able to deport literally anybody else, especially with expedited removal. The Trump admin has also been dogged by a case of a Salvadoran man living in Maryland. I want to give I got to give a round of applause for the New York Times. They called him a Salvadoran man living in Maryland. Thank you. That's literally what he is. Now, they could go on to say that he's an illegal immigrant. He was deported because of an administrative error. No, he was deported because he had an order of deportation, final order. He conceded in the appeals process that he was an El Salvadoran citizen subject to removal who entered the country illegally, but he was granted withholding, meaning he was supposed to go somewhere else, not stay here. The error was that he didn't get a USCIS interview. That's it. Look up the law. This horse is a fine mist at this point because I've been beating the dead horse so much, it's just pulverized. But you get it. Put up that law so many times. Now, the reality, my friends, is that most people support the efforts of Donald Trump. CNN calls this the deportation of a Salvadoran man has become a hinge point in U.S. history. Here we go. A sign says, release Kilmar Abrego Garcia, cease targeting immigrant communities. This is a state of conflict. I don't know how you describe it. I don't know if we would say it is war or whatever you want to say. I had an interesting conversation with Sebastian Gorka, which we'll be rolling for you tomorrow as we're editing these. So full disclosure, we did these recordings, super high res, raw files, 60 gigabytes, and we had to edit them down. It's not like the hardest thing in the world, but in order to effectively publish it, we're able to do about one per day. But he did mention that you got to understand, you have, 10 to 20 million illegal immigrants coming into this country. As of today, it's estimated that there could be even upwards of 40 million in total that are in this country. What if 1% were nefarious? He says you have effectively regiments. I forgot what word he used. That's the problem we're facing. With 10 to 20 million coming in just in the past 4 years alone, imagine if 1% are ne'er-do-wells. Not that they're organized, but just 1% ne'er-do-wells. We're talking about, with 10 million people, 100,000 criminals roaming our streets. And now we're getting story after story of young women being murdered, raped, and brutalized. That doesn't mean that it's a massive uptick in volume. It could just mean that the media is reporting on it because it's in the press. But we shouldn't have a single one of these stories in the press. We should never have a story of illegal immigrant kills American citizen because illegal immigrants should be deported or blocked from getting in. CNN says, the deported Maryland resident. I despise these people so much. They're lying. How about they say the deported illegal immigrant's fate is turning to a defining test of Trump's mass expulsion program and of Democrats' ability to frame an opposing argument of the political tricky issue of immigration, which normally favors the president and his party. The Abrego Garcia case and related matters could be a catalyst of the constitutional collision between an administration that brooks no restraints of its power and the authority of the judiciary to check an unfettered president. The judiciary doesn't have the power to issue universal injunctions like they're doing. And they are doing it. They are. Politico reports Judge scorches Trump admin for stonewalling an Abrego Garcia deportation case. They said it was willful. A federal judge accused Trump admin Tuesday of intentionally flouting her order to provide details about illegal deportation of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to El Salvador. I do not agree with the word illegal. I don't agree with that. I believe that we're looking at harmless error. So Andrew Branca described it. We are going to be having a bigger debate on this live on stage, the Culture War Live in the D.C. area. I believe we have like 2 tickets left. So if you go to timcast.com and join the Discord, I believe in the announcement section, we have the link to get your tickets. Show up. You can submit your view of the debate, and we will invite you up to join the debate with us. So don't suck, because Alex Stein will yell at you. But we're going to be debating this with Will Chamberlain and Pisco Litti, I believe his Pisco is a lawyer we've had on the show before. He's a liberal, and he's saying this was illegal. This was illegal. I reject that term. He was deported as he was ordered for deportation, and he was deported to a secure facility. I'll put it this way. He was supposed to have a USCIS interview, as I mentioned a million times, so we have an administrative error, but I wouldn't call it that illegal. I would call it in error, which seeks remedy, not illegal. And we can provide that remedy, which is send a USCIS official down there to interview him. Now, in my conversation with Secretary Noem, she says it's out of our hands. It's not our jurisdiction anymore. And to be fair, that is actually true, and it is factual and true, but there is a but. Trump could apply pressure and get him back if he wanted to apply pressure. I mean, come on. Like, if he said, look, give us the guy back, they would do it. But that also means that Trump is putting them in a bind to say, release an MS-13 gang member for your prisons. I actually don't know that Nayib Bukele would want to do it. So it is a challenge. Trump could apply pressure, could sour relations, so he's not going to. And why would he want to bring the guy back? But I don't think it's illegal. I think the issue is if the withholding of deportation was back to El Salvador because his life was threatened by a gang in Guatemala, well, he was sent to a prison for being MS-13. What's the issue? This is actually, understand me. The left keeps saying, fine, deport him, but why go to prison? He's a gang member. Ask El Salvador. Okay, but he had a withholding of deportation. Yes, because he feared a different gang in Guatemala would kill him. Well, so you couldn't deport him. Actually, we deported him into a secure facility where that gang can't get him. The circumstances of his deportation align perfectly. He fears that this gang will go to El Salvador and kill him. Okay, now he's in jail for being MS-13 where that gang can't get him. Next question. That's the game that they are playing, my friends. Now, I'm going to pull up this interview that I had with Rep. Kristi Noem for you now. So take a listen. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll play this for you now. But stay tuned because this will wrap in about 30 minutes, and then we'll be back for your Rumble rants. And enjoy. Well, I want to start right away with I think should be a very straightforward. Secretary Noem, it's great to sit here with you.
Yeah, it's good to visit with you too. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, this is super cool. Well, I want to start right away with I think should be a very straightforward question. Is Kilmar Abrego Garcia a terrorist?
Yes.
Why?
He's a member of MS-13, and it wasn't just a decision that this administration came to. It was decided by an immigration court and then an appellate immigration court as well. Also, local law enforcement officials and their interactions with him determined to be him a member of MS-13. And as well, when he encountered them, he was surrounded by other gang members of MS-13. So it's shocking to me how the liberal media has portrayed him as this normal Maryland father when he has for years conducted violent acts and is suspected of human trafficking as well, and has this background and record of being someone who has made our communities less safe. So, this, from the whole beginning, he should have been deported. He will never live in this country again. And it's a shame that what they're doing by lying to the American people.
Initially, when the story was reported, it was reported that the Trump administration said this was an administrative error. Shortly after, we're now hearing that actually it's not an error. He was deportable under the Alien Enemies Act.
Absolutely.
So what happened there with the first story that it was an error, but now that it's okay?
He had a final removal order in place and had it in place for several years. So he should have been deported. There was a paperwork issue that the court challenged, but other than the fact of that paperwork issue, he should have been deported all along, would have been deported. Even if he did find himself back in this country by some manner, he'd be immediately deported again. There is no scenario where he ever becomes a citizen or gets to live here in the United States again. He is a known terrorist, and he needs to be incarcerated and returned back to his home country.
So I could be wrong, I'm not a lawyer, but my understanding of the withholding of deportation as codified is that one of the ways in which it is voided is if the circumstances of their home country has changed significantly.
Right. They have to be under threat from their government. They have to be endangered for their lives. Are you talking about asylum?
So he was granted the withholding of deportation.
Yes.
Of deportation.
That's correct.
This is important. He was denied his asylum claim.
Yes.
My understanding. So this is a document that I hope people in media actually share, which they seem not to be. From 2019 that says that through his counsel, he conceded removability. They have acknowledged that.
That's true.
But he then applied for asylum, which was denied, which was time barred.
Correct.
He applied for withholding of deportation due to a rival gang from Guatemala that was threatening his family. And then he filed for withholding due to a fear of torture. That was also denied.
Correct.
If the circumstances in his home country have changed, it voids his withholding of deportation. So there's at least one scenario where the simple remedy that Democrats and liberals seem to be seeking is simply codified in the law is a USCIS interview to determine if the circumstances has changed.
Correct.
Could that just be done now and say we're done with it?
Could be done, except we have no jurisdiction. He's in his country. It's up to President Bukele what happens to him in his future right now. We took the right action. We deported him from our country. We had final removal orders. He was a member of a known terrorist organization. Now he's under that president in El Salvador's jurisdiction. So we don't have a say here in his future, other than the fact that if he tries to come back, that we would deport him again on those grounds.
And as much as four more Democrats have flown down.
Yep.
There's a rumor circulating that Maxine Dexter is saying she will not return until he is freed. But even then, the procedure that is in place for withholding of deportation, he would come right back to the U.S., have a simple interview with an official from USCIS, and they'd send him home.
And they'd send him home. Absolutely.
Why do you think the media is we're calling this the Maryland father hoax? All the headlines say a Maryland father over and over again. What do you think their motivation is for this?
Well, their motivation is power. They like to have people in power that allows them to control the narrative, to control the agenda, to control this country. I have long said for years, and we found this out during COVID, the media uses fear to control people. They use fear to promote an agenda. And that's what I hope the American people realize is not to let fear overwhelm them or compel them. Get the facts of the information. There's plenty of truth telling folks that can point to documents that are government official documents that will tell them exactly what President Trump is doing and what his administration is doing. And he got put into the White House because the American people realized the media was lying to them.
Yeah.
They realized that they could no longer trust when they turned on the TV that they would hear the real truth of their country, and they took control of it, decided to put a man in the White House that would fight for them and for safety in their communities.
We hear a lot that Senator Van Hollen came out the other day and said, actually, he's not opposed to deportation. His concern is the due process. There was no due process. And there have been claims from liberals and Democratic politicians, as well as the media, that there's no proof he's from MS-13 or was in MS-13, and also that he did not receive due process.
Foreign terrorist organizations are treated differently under our laws, and we have due process in place that is available for those that are in this country and even those that have illegal status in our country. So them claiming that is just another faux narrative that's out there that they're using to try to attack this. If you pay attention every day and every 24 hours, 48 hours, you're drawing attention to it that they're coming up with a new reason. That the reasons for why he shouldn't have been removed from the country from the liberals and from the fake press is that has been a changing narrative. They've done it every day. If we disprove one thing that they're saying, then they come up with something different to use to try to make their argument.
Yeah, and initially it was that he was a wrongfully deported Maryland father.
Yes.
Now we've gone so far as Senator Van Hollen saying, actually, I'm not vouching for the guy.
Yeah, right.
And if he's deported, that it's just an issue of due process now.
No.
But it seems
Which
to me...
is different than what he was saying originally.
Right.
Yeah.
But it seems to me, as you mentioned, due process varies based on your status in this country. Citizens are afforded... There's limited due process for non-citizens.
That's exactly right. Limited due process for non-citizens. Citizens are given due process, of course. And terrorist organizations are treated differently as well. So, and all of those laws, the Constitution, and were afforded to these individuals and to him. He was treated exactly as what he should have been. MS-13 gang member who is a terrorist who was removed from this country because he was a danger to our society.
I think it's fascinating that the principal argument at first was the withholding of deportation was de facto permanent residency.
Yeah.
As if it set aside the MS-13 affiliations, the sworn statement, I believe it was a sworn statement from his wife saying he beat her several times.
Yes.
You remove that and we just have illegal immigrant. It's strange to me. I mean, honestly, it's not really strange. I get why they're doing it, but the argument that a single judge says there's a withholding of deportation, so now he's a de facto permanent resident of the United States in this limbo legal status, that seems like an untenable situation they've created.
Absolutely. I don't know how they maintain that position because they will be disproved wrong. And the American people clearly aren't with them. So as consistent as they are at lying and perverting the facts, I would just remind everybody out there that those of us who know the truth have to be just as bold and just as consistent and keep pushing back. Because it clearly, the last year in this election cycle, proved that people are listening. They're desperate for honest, genuine people who will speak the truth. So,
for all of the deportations we've seen so far under the Alien Enemies Act, has there been due process for these individuals?
For the ones that were removed that yes, have a due process in place, yes, absolutely, they should have been.
What is the process for, let's say, you guys find another MS-13 gang member. Right now, are they brought before a judge? Evidence is presented. How does that work?
They have convictions, criminal, illegal aliens in this country. Some of them have final removal orders. And I believe not, I don't know if necessarily all of them do, but they could. I could double check that because we've literally deported thousands of them.
Right.
If you look at TDA members alone, it's been over 1,000 of them individually. And then you've got the MS-13 gang members. There's been some other gangs in this country as well that those criminal aliens have been deported to. So
I guess
that is the process.
my question is largely that the people that are being selected for deportation or removal under the AEA are already convicted, have already gone through the courts.
Correct.
And now the Trump administration is saying we've got a list of people who have been found to be in violation.
Correct.
So these are people well past due process.
Correct.
These are federal deportations.
Correct.
There was one story that got a little bit of attention, but seems not to be getting as much anymore, and it's about this Venezuelan hairdresser. Are you familiar with this story?
A little bit, but you'll have to jog my memory as well.
To be honest, it hasn't been as prominent in the press.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing about it is I'm wondering why, because it seems to be a much better story for liberals and Democrats that are critical of the deportations. The story here is that, and I'm probably getting it wrong to a certain extent, a Venezuelan man illegally entered the United States. He has 2 crown tattoos on each hand. A court found that, a judge, I should say, because it's executive branch, found this to be MS-13 gang symbols.
Okay.
And so he was deported to El Salvador. Venezuela is refusing to accept their nationals.
Yep.
People that are found to be in MS-13 are sent to El Salvador. I don't know much about that other than that, and I'm trying to understand what that story was and why. I mean, that story sounds...
One of the reasons
It sounds worse.
One of the reasons that I went to El Salvador and I sat down with the president and I went to that prison and visited was to talk to the warden, to talk to the people that are there and their law enforcement officials as well as ours. One of the reasons I'm out with our ICE agents and I'm out with the DEA, ATF, FBI, out there with HSI and all of our CBP officers, and to talk to them on the front lines is to see how they make these determinations. I've sat there for hours while they're doing raids and look through cases and how they make the determinations of what those court orders look like. They have far more than tattoos just to go on. They have repeat criminal offenses. They are hanging around with other gang members. They're involved in activities which are illegal in this country. So they have done casework and built a case against these individuals far beyond just a tattoo. That specific case, for me, I'd have to refresh my mind on all the details of it. But I do know for a fact that those that are on the front lines right now, deporting these criminals and the worst of the worst, like President Trump has directed, boy, they're doing a lot of work to build these cases to make sure they're getting the right individuals and getting them out of this country as fast as they can.
This is the challenge in the political circumstances that were created over the past 4 years. Bill Ackman tweeted, a nation that would allow millions of people into the country unvetted, but then requires vetting for every single person to be deported, will lose the values it's trying to protect.
Yeah, I believe that's true.
But it seems like an impossible situation. It seems like our values have been attacked, and we're put in this emergency circumstance where how do you effectively deport upwards of, if we go in the high end, 20 million people? I can certainly understand the Alien Enemies Act, groups that are narco gang terrorists who have killed politicians. For your run-of-the-mill illegal immigrant economic migrant came here illegally, how do you deport, let's say low end, even 10 million people?
Yeah, it's a big job, especially when you're doing this kind of factual information and case building against individuals. So we knew it would be difficult. It's amazing what opening the doors to bad actors around the world can do to a country. And Joe Biden just let them all come in. We've deported over 100 known terrorists in this country, gone after known terrorists and gotten them out. And just this weekend, you probably heard about the individual who's the most wanted terrorist in India that we picked up on an ICE operation.
India?
The most wanted terrorist in the entire country in India.
Wow.
And picked him up and are getting him out of this country as well. So there are people out there that came here to destroy us, to conduct terrorist activities that President Trump is focused on in order to stop something bad that it would happen. So it's taking a while, but in the meantime, that's why we've been so aggressive in showing the consequences of being here illegally, to show what will happen to the American people and to those who are here illegally, that you have the chance to leave. You can leave on your own and get the chance to come back to the United States.
I've seen your commercials.
If you don't, and we pick you up, you'll never come back. And President Trump wanted that message out there aggressively because he recognizes that a lot of these folks that we're talking about will need to self-deport.
Yeah.
They can face, if they stay over the 30 days of the Alien Registration Act, up to $1,000 a day fine that they're here in this country if they don't leave. And if they just register on that new app, CBP Home app, and leave, they have the chance to come back. And President Trump is very committed to making sure we speed up that process and get them back here. If they're good people, who want to be Americans.
When I was younger, this is during the Bush administration, we kept hearing about the terrorists.
Yes.
And, they're going to get you. And, in urban circles and in activist circles, it was seen as fear-mongering from the government about the terrorists, because how many of us had actually encountered, say, Al-Qaeda or something on the streets?
Exactly.
But there's Donald Trump's recent designation of groups like Tren de Aragua and MS-13 as terrorist groups.
Right.
And you've mentioned you've deported, or removed, I should say, 100 known terrorists. What does it mean, terrorist? Like, what is that just a legal designation, or is there something about them that you can quantify for the American people?
Someone who is coming here to coordinate some kind of violent activity in a community, on a place of public, hated America, affiliated with Hamas or Al-Qaeda, affiliated with one of these gang members that was going in and taking down communities. Some of the conversations of what these gang members have done in El Salvador and in Venezuela, to hear directly from President Bukele on the terrorist activities they did, mowing down whole communities of people. They would come in just because they wanted to take over a neighborhood, kill every single person in that country and bury them in mass graves. And then those individuals came here. And so he has stamped out MS-13 in his country by being aggressive.
Yeah.
Venezuela's not. But that is why we are working so hard to get both of them out before TDA gets a foothold here in this country, and we can't stop them.
Yeah, it's remarkable. The stories that have been in the press for 20 plus years about MS-13, they I think might be 36 politicians, I could be getting a number, killed in Mexico because they dared to speak out against them.
That's true.
And so if we understand the definition of terrorism is use of violence and force for political ends, I think that qualifies when you're killing politicians because you're trying to seize control. And then you have Tren de Aragua in this country. They seized control of apartment complexes, and that's just one story. But the funny thing is the media denied it was happening.
Yeah.
I cannot fathom this. Why would you defend groups that have taken over apartment complexes?
Yeah. I'm not certain. I honestly can't wrap my head around what goes on in their brains.
They hate Trump.
Why they think, it just has to be a hatred for President Trump. But they're sacrificing thousands of Americans, not just to the violence and killings and the stories of what a lot of these Angels mobs has told, but the drugs that they're bringing into this country. We've just hit the tip of the iceberg of what's out there. And then the trafficking of individuals on labor and sex trafficking. Yeah. They're the ones who are proliferating that across this country. And they're also the ones who are making billions of dollars doing it.
There's also the standard economic damage from an influx of low-skilled labor.
Right.
What we've seen in communities like New York, Chicago, everywhere basically. In New York, you've got hotels putting up these illegal immigrants, giving them benefits.
Right.
Some have mentioned they might get $3,000 per month in benefits total. And then in Chicago, you actually had in the black community, they were trying to establish a big camp. And community members came out and said, we are being replaced, which was kind of crazy to hear because the media told us that was a white supremacist talking point.
Right.
And here was the black community saying, why are all of these people flooding our schools, our community centers? So it's beyond terror. There's also economic concerns. And I guess my question then is, as Secretary of DHS, this is your job over, like all the deportations, all of that stuff is coming down to you?
It is.
And the men and women, of course.
Actually, the Department of Homeland Security was created after 9/11, and it was all the agencies put under one umbrella that really have the responsibility for protecting the interior and to safeguard the United States of America. So I tell people all the time, anyone who lives here, comes into this country, or leaves this country, I have jurisdiction over. Any product that comes into this country or leaves this country or is used here, I have jurisdiction over. Anything on the internet that's said or conveyed or communicated, we have jurisdiction over. So it is a broad span of agencies and departments under this umbrella that is really tasked with a national security position of working to prevent terrorism, domestic terrorism, and what we've seen the last, I'd say 10, 15 years is homegrown terrorism. The problem with MS-13 now is they've gone so long unchecked, is that some of them have been born here. Some of them are U.S. citizens, but they're still terrorists, and they're still a part of this gang that is out there perpetuating violence. So the game is changing, and if we don't go after it really aggressive as fast as we possibly can, their foothold is continuing to grow, and it's going to be even more difficult to deal with them.
That issue has led to split opinions among, I would say, the Trump support base between deporting the homegrown terrorists versus keeping them here in the United States. And I'm largely in favor of Guantanamo Bay, like making sure that it's within our jurisdiction. However, I think for a lot of people that are saying, no, Trump is crazy, you can't do that, even those who support him, is the concern that it's going to be a run-of-the-mill, I don't know, robber or
Yeah.
mugger. But I think Trump is talking about MS-13 born in America who have joined a narco gang.
Yes, and those individuals specifically are facing consequences here in this country. We're working those cases. We're focused on the ones that need to be repatriated back to their homes, and back to their home countries. Well, the vast majority of negotiations that have gone on with other countries have gone very well. Venezuela is one that has not cooperated very well, but every nation has a responsibility to take their citizens back. And Marco Rubio's done fantastic work in making sure that we have, because in order for us to take these individuals to those countries, we have to get permission to land there.
Yeah.
We have to get permission to be in their airspace, and then we have to have travel documents for them. So that negotiation that the State Department is doing has to be a piece of this puzzle too, that has made it even more difficult, but helpful for those that we've had good conversations with.
Right, I believe the issue is Venezuela just told us to screw off.
Yeah, they did. But, honestly, President Trump putting sanctions on them and causing them some real pain makes a difference. And we've seen a little bit more cooperation out of them. They started taking some flights now. And so we'll continue to keep the pressure on. But that government's not stable, and that government is not a good actor. So we'll see what we can do to continue to work with them.
There was a report during the Biden administration that Dr. Phil brought to the attention of The View. He had spoken with the head of the CBP union and said, he asked, are children being trafficked into slavery and child prostitution? And his report was that the head of the CBP union said it's not possible, it's a fact, it is happening.
Right.
And that there were children coming across the border with numbers written on their arms. Now, my concern is, this means CBP agents knew that they were giving children into sex trafficking. I don't understand how that's possible. How is it possible that our law enforcement knew that was happening and allowed it to happen?
Well, they're going to have to reconcile that within themselves, but they were not allowed to do their jobs. If I've been out there, I've spent out there for dozens and dozens of hours and spent days with our Border Patrol on the southern border, on the northern border, in our ports, seeing and hearing stories of what they encountered. And their hands were tied by Joe Biden and his administration. They were told they could not do their jobs. And many of these individuals, if you think about it, they grew up in these communities. You talk to Border Patrol agents who have lived for generations in Del Rio, El Paso. They have lived where their families have spent their lives there. And to watch it get destroyed by the liberals and the Democrats under the last administration was heartbreaking for them. So every time I'm out there, whether it's doing patrols with them, if I'm, in looking at casework with them, if I'm out on the water or riding horse or whatever it is, we're talking and sharing conversations of what tools that they need, what kind of support do they need, what equipment they have that doesn't work anymore, what kind of surveillance cameras do they need, and technology. We have trains crossing our border from Texas or from Mexico that we don't even scan right now. We don't even know what's in them. We have a lot of our air freight, we don't have the technology to even scan what's coming in. So our ports need to be secured. Joe Biden left a lot of vulnerabilities out there for our country, and we don't know necessarily or have a great grasp on what's coming in until Donald Trump came into the White House.
And it's amazing, within a week, it's like the border secured.
It is, yeah. I mean, we broke the national historic record for the lowest border encounters in the nation's history in February and March. It's amazing to me what good leadership can do, because we didn't change any laws through Congress. We do wish Congress would do something on it, but and we're hoping they'll pass some ability for us to have the technology what we need, but to have a strong leader come in and just enforce the laws, boy, look what a game changer.
I mean, and these are the same personnel.
Yeah.
The people that were there
Absolutely.
before that, we've seen some interviews with some of these individuals, or maybe it's just candid, ambient conversation that got recorded, and it's, even if we stop these guys, our orders from the Biden administration is just give them an appearance and cut them loose.
Correct.
And then the Biden admin dropped all of the court cases, creating this de facto residency, this limbo, second-class citizenry.
Yeah. And what I need more immigration judges in courts, because we've got a backlog that they created that needs to be dealt with so that folks can get those final removal orders quicker, get them out of this country, and then that speeds up also people's ability to come back into the country legally, to follow our laws and be a part of our society in America if they want to.
It's a tough spot with these reports that we got about child trafficking and drugs. And I understand the complexities of especially a position like yours. Were we to have this internal review of our existing agents that facilitated child trafficking, They didn't want to. Their boss ordered them to do it. The question that comes up when I have this conversation is conservatives saying these guys were doing the best they could, and it was the administration and the people at the top who should be held responsible, charged or otherwise, for instructing them to do these things. I'm not so split on it. I think if you were knowingly handing off a child to some third-party NGO or whatever that was going to transport that child into trafficking, I personally hold you responsible for that. Again, I understand the near impossible circumstances of you have 4 years to get the job done. And if you're going to spend all of your time looking for begrudging, maybe CBP agents that were callous as opposed to actual terrorists, what can you really get done? But I bring it up because it gives me a bad feeling, I guess.
Yeah, I think the focus has been on certainly educating all those officers, giving them tools they need. For instance, Joe Biden quit DNA testing those children. So they couldn't prove that those children didn't belong to those individuals. We immediately started that back up so that when somebody said, this is my child, this person is related to me, if we DNA test them and they're not at all, then immediately we're taking that child out of their custody to make sure that they're truly with someone they should be with. Yeah. That wasn't happening on Joe Biden. He took those tools away from them so that those CBP officers didn't have any certainty on what they were dealing with. They had to prove a case, and they knew that if they didn't, they extended themselves and inserted themselves into those situations that they didn't have the information they needed to really prove that they were doing the right thing.
I think the results we've seen show that at the very least, the existing personnel were capable with the right leadership to do the job. But is there...
But I will tell you, and one thing that, in Homeland Security that we've been doing is we're polygraphing everybody. We're kind of going hardcore. So I'm just, I don't trust anybody. And
really polygraphing.
Yeah, we are polygraphing everybody. So if I had a CBP officer that was sitting there and facilitated child trafficking, first thing I do is put him on a polygraph and start building a case against him. So we've done that with people on our executive offices, heading up our biggest agencies, in our communications department. We've had all these leaks going on. We've polygraphed those individuals. If we think somebody is not on Team America, then, I want to find out if you really understand that you're working for the people of this country.
I love it.
So nobody's done that before, but if I have the authority to do it, I'm going to do it to make sure. The deep state exists.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say 10 years ago, you could have told me, I would have been skeptical on that and thought, everybody's kind of seeing shadows. Boy, if anything has proven to me that it does, and that there are people embedded in this government, and that there are people that are facilitating crimes and criminal activity, I know that there are. And so we're going to make sure that we're doing all we can to clean house and get people out of here that would facilitate something as horrific as that.
Yeah, I think it sounds like for a lot of these guys, their ability to... The CBP agents, their ability to discern was stripped by the Biden administration.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand. I've sat there and spent hours with them listening to their heartbreaking stories about what they would do when they would suspect something. They'd report it. They'd file a case. It would go up to their supervisors. Their supervisors might even recognize and submit it. And then it always stopped. Or that we're told that child would be put in a right position only to find that child months later crossing the border again with another group of individuals.
Well, I assume that any kind of prosecution would go through the DOJ.
Absolutely.
Has there been, obviously I'm not going to ask for specifics because you just ruin whatever case, but has there been, it's sounding like there is some effort to make sure that anybody who was involved in untoward behaviors internally is going to face that justice?
Yes, absolutely. We've got known leakers in DHS that we're going to be prosecuting. DOJ helps us with that. I would say DOJ is... got a pile of work to do because, as you can see, all these court challenges that happen at the district level, Supreme Court challenges, DOJ has to go out and defend. The more these liberals can keep us tied up in court, the less work we can actually get done. And so that's their game. They want to bankrupt us. They want to spend more and more money, tie up our lawyers so that we can't be out there doing good work for people.
Well, this is they're referring to it as a judicial coup.
Correct.
You have more universal injunctions on the Trump administration than all other administrations. About 40% of all universal injunctions ever issued under the Donald Trump first term, and now I believe it's at 17. And this is unconstitutional.
It is, and what I would say is that the President Trump anticipated this. If you look at the hell he went through the last several years, he anticipated that he would be back in court fighting to get the kind of things done in this country we needed to put it back on its foundation. So they knew it. I just don't think that we understood or I didn't understand how weak the liberals' arguments would be, but they would still argue them. And that they would still have people sitting on a bench that we used to call the honorable, that we just can't even find a recognition of that in how they're conducting the business and how they're perverting the benches.
To stress the absurdity of some of these universal injunctions, when the president said that those suffering from gender dysphoria and displaying symptoms
Yes.
are barred from service, a judge issued a nationwide declaration that the military must allow all.
Yeah.
And so this meant that restrictions under the DSM-5 for enlistment were voided for that period, which is, I mean, the statement then people say, this means that a schizophrenic individual under the same guidelines is now admitted to the military, but we can't do that.
Right.
That's how absurd these rulings have been. I mean, it's nuts.
No, absolutely. Hand that person a weapon and magazines full of ammunition and then send them out and expect them to make wise decisions. It's just, the reality of it is inoperable, and that's what I think is shocking. The DEI got so deep that just common sense didn't reign the day anymore. And you hear us constantly referring to common sense because that's what it takes to survive in this country. That's what it takes to go out there and to take care of people. There's good and there's evil. And unfortunately, what we've seen right now and pervaded in this country in the liberal left is a lot of evil.
I agree. I got one more quick one for you that, just take it, go as quickly as you need to because I know we're short for time.
Sure.
You mentioned over 100 known terrorists captured.
Yes.
There is a big fear that with the border being as porous as it was, enemies of the United States, not just narco gangs, but say Iranians or ISIS, have entered this country.
Yes.
And there's a fear they're lying in wait. Is there a reality there, and what can we do about it?
They have entered the country, and we're doing all we can to make sure that they're out of this country before that can happen. So, you wonder what keeps me up at night? It's that. We have huge events coming up. We also have seen that they've not been picky as to what kind of events that they will conduct terrorist activities on. Large gatherings of people, churches, schools, communities. We have the World Cup coming up, club championships. We have the Olympics. Yeah. We had the Boston Marathon here, which went well. And so all those things are the responsibility of Homeland Security. Every football game, basketball game, everything, we have the responsibility to make sure we're defending against attacks like that. So we know that they're here. We need to find them and get them out of this country and help them face consequences for what their goals are. They do not love America, and they're affiliated with countries and different groups that want to destroy America, and will keep doing that.
I wish it were easy, but it's not. But I do thank you for your time, Secretary Noem. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Yes, nice to visit with you. Thank you. Anytime.
Thanks for joining me.
You bet.
And that was it, my friends. We recorded that yesterday, and I got to say, the news on polygraphing, going after the leakers, was very, very welcome news. And I will give you a little bit of background. If you've watched my show, you've seen me like screaming and swinging my hammer around about the CBP agents that facilitated trafficking. Me saying that I want them prosecuted. I want them to go to jail for doing this. What I will say is, as obvious as it probably is, I'm trying to maintain some degree of respect and decorum for the head of DHS, where if I just angrily came out and said, I am so pissed, arrest him, I don't think you accomplish much by just yelling. However, I think she did make a good point that I had not considered, which probably calms me down a little bit. It may not be as simple as these guys were like, that kid's going to traffickers, send them on their way. But, is that kid really going to their parents? That might be someone being trafficked. What do I do? And then higher up saying, nah, just don't worry about it. And so they're in this position of vagaries where it's like, I don't know what that kid is doing or not, and I don't know how I'm supposed to handle this. You can't send the kid back into the desert where they die. What do? I got to be honest, I'd quit. And so that being said, I still have general disdain. I would argue any CBP agent that literally knew, lock them up. But I do respect what she was saying in that a lot of these guys were unsure and they didn't know what else to do. And so I have a little bit more empathy in that regard, but me personally, I'd quit. However, when she was like, we're polygraphing people, I'm like, thank you. Because we've heard this at the DOD as well, that they're looking for leakers. And she's saying they're going to be going after these individuals. So very interesting stuff. And we'll grab some of your chats now, your Rumble rants. We got a couple. I think we only have a couple, actually. And then, of course, tomorrow, Sebastian Gorka talked to us about terror and military strikes on foreign targets, of course, which my concern was I don't want to be involved in foreign wars and intervention. And Gorka mentioned we will not have regime change wars. We will have precision strikes. That actually am in more agreement with. I mentioned that Ron Paul said we shouldn't be invading and removing governments. We should be issuing letters of marque and reprisal. Our military should be targeting specific groups. And, Gorka mentioned it's a novel concept. It's an old thing. I don't know how we bring it back. But the idea is enemies of this country, not nations. We do not go into countries and remove their governments. But rebel groups, terror organizations will be targeted. And I think that's probably not the ideal scenario for most anti-intervention people. But it is tremendous that we have an administration that is banking on no new wars and saying we want limited military strikes. I'd prefer none, but I wonder if that's just too naive when you have the Houthis blowing up cargo ships or targeting them. I wish the answers were easy, my friends. I don't have them all, but I appreciate you guys hanging out and listening to this interview. We also have an interview with Secretary Duffy coming up, and I asked him about aliens. Half jokingly, but he said he has seen videos of these drones, these things going into water and emerging as if the water is not there. And I got to tell you, I'm like, people overlook Department of Transportation. They're just like, what is transportation? Who cares? We're talking about vehicles in the sky. We're talking about if bombs, weapons, attacks are coming through drones, technology, flying cars, autonomous cars. He mentioned flying taxis are coming. I'm like, I think so. It's a good conversation, and that should be up Monday. We got Arsonist saying, I hope everyone's having a good Wednesday. Keep your head up. It's fantastic. HS Disturbed says the left probably wants him back for a hearing because they know they've captured judges that will openly defy the court, the law, and the Constitution. I agree. And these guys don't get these hearings. It's expedited removal. That's what's absolutely insane about the whole thing. What do we have here? Rude comments, people arguing with each other over Israel. What is this one? The time, Big Bunny Man says, the time for being a weak coward is over, Tim. Well, I mean, I can say that to a lot of people, indeed. Let's see. Someone is Tim Paul says I work for the CIA. No, not the CIA. The CIA, they claim they don't work domestically. I will tell you, everybody always accuses everybody else of being a cop. Good luck finding them, I guess. Not I, said the fly. Davida says, Tim, thanks for the reference on culture war. Could you please check out the passion project I'm working on? In the showcase, I distilled it. The idea is Voters Nation, tracking elected officials. Very interesting. We are, of course, going to be sending you all to join our good friend Russell Brand in just a moment. So let me see if I can. We're going to pull up old Russell's stream here. I believe he's live today. He's currently live right now getting ready for his show. We're going to be launching that raid. And of course, we're going to have segments throughout the day. And we are back tonight at 8 p.m. for Timcast IRL. But of course, my friends, the debate is on. So Will Chamberlain and Pisco Litti on X, that's his username, we're debating the merits of the Kilmar Abrego Garcia story, in which Destiny said, I will give $10,000 to the Wounded Warrior Project if you two debate this. So I said, let's do it Culture War Live. And Destiny said, whoa, I'm not going to give $10,000 to a nonprofit now because Tim Pool's involved. If the argument was I would give $10,000 to anyone, I'd get it. But it's going to Wounded Warriors. Why are you pulling your donation to Wounded? I'll tell you this, Destiny. Make your donation anyway, regardless. I have announced Tunnels to Towers, $10,000, and Wounded Warriors will be getting $10,000. So I am doubling that donation because they shouldn't lose out simply because Destiny is angry we don't have him on the show. We had him on the show twice, and then he started praising the death of Corey Compertor. So he said, I was like, well, we can't have him on the show if he's going to praise death. It's against the rules. We'll just get banned. Why do it? He got super angry, and then was like, well, you're Russian. And okay, cry more, dude. So we're going to be giving $10K to Wounded Warriors and $10K to Tunnels to Towers. I'm a big fan of Tunnels to Towers because I watch their commercials all day, and I love it when they, these widows get their houses taken care of, or they're these veterans who have been injured can have their homes paid for, or adaptive tools for them to live in their homes better. Things like helping them go upstairs and stuff. That is incredible work. So, some people have said you got to watch out because these nonprofits may not be good. I don't know, man. I know it's tough. How do you trust these nonprofits? I just do. So Wounded Warriors and Tunnels to Towers will be the beneficiaries for this debate on May 3rd. Join the timcast.com Discord server if you'd like to get involved and actually sit down and debate us at our debate table. Alex Stein will be there, and if you're boring, he'll yell at you. But I have to imagine a lot of people will enjoy being yelled at by Alex Stein. So we're saying, think Kill Tony meets Jubilee. We want people from different walks of life and different backgrounds to come and debate. And but we want to do it in a way that actually it's panel controlled, not random people controlled. The raid on Russell Brand has begun, my friends. Thank you so much for hanging out. Smash the like button, share the show with everyone you know. Follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. We're back tomorrow at noon. We'll be interviewing Sebastian Gorka, and it'll be fun. Thank you all so much for hanging out. We'll see you in the rest of the day with more segments.